And go from the Brady Bunch to just looking at me so people don't have to squint at tiny little things. So hello and welcome to another Sunday talk with the Nine-Sided Circle. If you're watching this on YouTube, do feel free to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you have, welcome, thank you. If you like the talk, please hit the thumbs up. If you hated the talk, hit the thumbs down. I can no longer tell you to hit the notify button because they made that go away. But if they hadn't, I would be telling you that right now. So anyway, tonight we're going to talk about sensing. This is a particular use of the word for a series of practices that come out of the Sufi schools of Central Asia and were a very foundational part of the Gurdjieff work, interestingly enough. It was, in some ways, one of the first things that he taught. So in order to understand sensing, you first must understand the concept of sensory motor amnesia. Sensory motor amnesia basically says that we all, after a while, forget certain areas of our body, certain ranges of motion, certain ways to move, and they literally become almost invisible to us. And as we age, especially through lack of movement and injury and that sort of thing, we begin to limit our motion more and more and more until we end up with a bad case of sensory motor amnesia. And the sensing exercises are designed first to break that, to begin to allow you to recover parts of yourself. And eventually they get you to the point where you recover yourself totally. That's the theory anyway. So how do you do this? Mr. Gurdjieff had people do it by putting them in unhabitual physical positions. This is what he did with his exercises and dances. Think about it. You're used to sitting a particular way. So everybody sit forward from where you're sitting and lean to your right about this much. And just hold that. All of a sudden you're getting different information from your body than usual, right? You feel different things. Maybe you notice your spine, you notice your rib cage in certain areas. In a moment or two, you're going to start noticing some muscles because they're going to start complaining about being like this. All of a sudden, you can come back now. All of a sudden, you're sensing. This is what Mr. Gurdjieff meant by that, and this is how the old exercises work. Where is your body habitually, and how to move out of it to begin to reclaim your awareness of being in a body, for lack of a better term, and being in the world. So, while you're sitting there, take a moment and feel behind you, sense behind you, like say 12 inches or whatever that is in centimeters away from your back. And that's another kind of sensing. The void practice that I have encouraged you all to do is yet another kind of sensing. This is actually, when it comes to how the practices are put together, the sensing practices are fundamental. So does this make sense, what I'm talking about? This idea of the places where you are not habitually are places where you have a bit of sensory motor amnesia.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, Dave, can you hear me? Hello, Dave. Good. Dave says he can hear you, but he can't do video. Now, in Dave's work, my sense is that a lot of what you do does exactly this. Would you say that that's more or less accurate? Good. I should have, if Dave had better video, I'd just have him take over the class at this point because he could probably speak to it better than me. Drat, I was hoping to stick you with most of the class tonight, Dave, but the internet has foiled my nefarious plan.
He probably still has audio.
Yeah, Dave says, though I have found that just being in the posture does not completely work on the sensory motor amnesia, and that's absolutely correct. Being in a unhabitual posture will give you access, but it won't cure the sensory motor amnesia. It takes a few other steps to begin to do that. You have to, basically, you have to learn to fill your body with awareness. And this is something that we're not used to. So, what does that mean, filling your body with awareness? Let me give you an example. Everybody take your right arm and let it hang down to your side. Now, point up over your head. Now, in that entire movement, where was your awareness? If you were like most people, it was at the very beginning of the movement and the very end of the movement, and you can put your arms down. And everything in between, there was no awareness. Does that sound fairly accurate?
Mm-hmm.
So, what if you had awareness of the entire range of motion as you bring your arm up? That there was no point where you were not aware of your body. How would that be different? This is not a rhetorical question. I would like some answers from you. How would it be different if you had full awareness of your motion through the entire range of the motion?
More continuous and more satisfying.
I like the more satisfying part especially, because I find that to be true as well.
Yeah, and certainly become more aware of the energy flows through there. I mean, that's a lot of what is done in Qigong practice, right? Is to practice the sensation as you do the various movements through the body rather than external to it.
Yep. Dave makes mention the fine-tuning, qualitative depth, and you can feel the bracing connections in the trunk and beyond. And this is also correct. When you begin to truly sense your own body, and you'll hear this talked about in internal martial arts. When I raise my arm, that motion, if I'm standing, will start at the sole of my opposite foot. And you should be able to feel the entire connection through that motion. So what would this mean for you? If you were able to move in this way anytime you wanted, and that this became your default state, as opposed to your default state being basically unconscious of your body. Again, not a rhetorical question.
Well, certainly one of the things it does for me is it puts my attention there, which means it takes it away from the usual distractions. That in itself is, I guess, different, so.
Yeah. In some ways, this is a trick because you can only feel your body in the present moment. You can't feel your body a minute ago. You can't feel your body a minute from now. You can only feel your body now. So as you increase your ability to sense the movement of your body, you are more here. You're starting to do what old Baba Ram Dass used to say and be here now. And Matthew says, perhaps one would project less with their mind. Yes, one would indeed project less with their mind. And once you begin to allow yourself to sense in present time, there are several stages to this. The first is sensing your body in present time, filling your entire body with your awareness so that you know where every part of you is and you engage all of your senses in it. You become very, very present. The second stage is to fill your space with your sensing. So you're not just in your body, but you're in your body in your space. And if this
space, what do you mean here? Your surrounding space?
Yes, this space, that's the only space you got, is the one that you're in right now.
Right, okay.
So then the final level of this is sensing yourself. And Mr. Gurdjieff in his last book gave an English version of this, which is say to yourself, I am, and sense what that is. And it's not the words, it's the sensing of your own reality, of your own presence. And when you can do these three things together, and this will sound familiar to some of you because I've talked about this in different ways before, when you can be in your body, in your space, and aware of your own self, aware of your own awareness, aware of your cogito, as Descartes said, then you become something slightly different than normal, and not necessarily in a bad way. And that last bit is the hardest. So try it right now. Just say to yourself, I am. I am. You affirm yourself and notice your sense of that. Not the words, but the sense of your own isness. And this is I am without reference. Then come back before you dissolve into the universe and become one with everything. And tell me what you think, what you sense. Does that work for you even for a moment?
Something kind of perks up for me, definitely just saying I am, but forgetting about
Yeah, it's here we have self-observation, body, self-remembering, body and space, self-witnessing, body, space, and self. Yes, exactly right, Dave. Aaron says, I feel localized. I think I understand what you mean by that, but can you elaborate just a little bit? And Nancy says, awareness of the texture of my own experience. Aaron says, embodied in my particular space. Yes. So my old CLOT teacher used to say to me all the time, he used to say, the principles are few, but the techniques are infinite. And for those of you who have been hanging around for a while, this is what I want you to see, that we have approached this thing from 15 different directions. But each of those directions is built on the same principle. And we can call this the principle of sensing. Nancy says, also calmer, yes. So let me pull up my notes here. I actually made a bunch of notes. I used to never make notes. All right, so I want you all to try an experiment. Think of someone who annoys you, other than me. Better that you don't do this with me. Do it with somebody else. And I want you to imagine them in front of you, or to either side of you, or even behind you, annoying you. And then I want you to do what you just did. Sense your body, sense your space, and sense your I am. And tell me how that changes your perception, if it does. And so tell me, Nancy says, my visualization of them gets faint. How does your feeling about them get? Does it also get faint? And Aaron says, I feel like I am no longer party to the annoyance. Yes. Dave observes, it metabolizes the emotions and sensations in an interesting and, dare I say, alchemical way. Alchemical is a good word for it. And David observes, I change posture. And Matthew observes, more in my body, less to no fear.
I guess one thing that happens when I do that kind of stuff is the environment, or in this case, that person, in some sense becomes part of me. There's a sense of that I'm no longer separate from that which I am presumably aware of at this point, you know. And in that sense, less objectionable, I guess, in the case of that obnoxious person. But,
yeah, and that's pretty high level stuff. When you start getting that effect, that's what you want. Hang on, somebody is, I think somebody's trying to get into everything. Don't need to worry about that. Yeah, Matthew appends, more in my power. Yes. If you want to be more powerful, this will do it. If you want to have more charisma, this will do it. Everybody remember my talk so long ago on charisma and what it takes?
I'm not sure I was there for that.
How could you miss that, Nancy?
You didn't have enough charisma.
That could be the case. Good comeback. So I'm going to refresh your minds a bit, or give you the information one more time. So charisma, in Arabic, it's karamat. And that often is translated as miraculous powers, but it isn't. Miraculous powers are different. Karamat are charismatic powers, which do not violate the laws of physics. And charisma is a combination of three things. And those three things are, first of all, the amount of warmth you can project. Second, the amount of power you can project. And third, the amount of presence you can project. Those three things are what make up charisma. And when you can do all three of those very, very strongly, you are said to have large amounts of charisma.
What do you mean by project?
To put in the world. So you can have lots and lots of power, but your body can say, oh, I am a terrible, weak person, right? I do this all the time. It's I call it my Yoda act. When I'm, out in the world and I have my cane, I move around like an old man and everybody leaves me alone. Or you can be present. You can go, yes, I'm powerful. I have my own, I can do. Power is the ability to do. Warmth is the same thing. Warmth is usually projected through body language, just as power is. And presence is the glue that holds it all together. Presence would be the reconciling force between warmth and power. Because warmth and power are sort of in opposition to each other. Aaron asks, did you mention Steve's book, Charisma? I've mentioned it a few times and I will mention it again. Stephen Barnes' missing book called Charisma. And the reason it's his missing book is a long story, but it's actually still in print and you can still get copies of it, and it's well worth reading. It's science fiction or speculative fiction, and it's great fun. And Matthew O'Connor asks, is warmth the same as love? Damn near. It is the kind of love that Sufis talk about, as opposed to the kind of love that Casanova talks about. A better word than love would be loving kindness, which we consider to be a very high state. So, what the sensing exercises work on is the presence axis of this particular triangle, because that is the one that is most missing in most human beings most of the time. If you are lost in your habitual nature, you are not present. And the sensing exercises that we give people are designed to get you to be present. The more present you are, the less mechanical you have to be. Does that make sense? So this starts with the body. And there are hundreds of different exercises for this. Just where you're sitting now, you can begin to sense various body parts, like your elbows. Before I mentioned this, you probably didn't notice your elbows and your earlobes and the back of your head. You can just shift your awareness to these places. You can systematically fill your body with awareness and to attempt to sense your entire body as a whole. And you can do it while sitting motionless, or you can do it while moving. I personally think that doing it while moving is a more both effective and efficient way of doing this, because you get a certain amount of biofeedback from your body that allows you to sense more easily.
So most of this is primarily an injunction, if I understand it correctly, to put your attention on your body and its sensations, right? It's not an injunction to keep your attention on your body continuously, is it? I mean, presumably it's a question of ability to sense your body or to put your attention someplace else when you need to, right? Or are you saying that this is a continuous state that you're going to be in and then operate from that state?
I will tell you that I have never been able to stay in this state continuously, but it gets of greater and greater duration the longer I live. And
even when you're doing other stuff, right?
Especially when I'm doing other stuff. There is no other stuff.
Right.
If I am doing something, my body is involved with that.
But presumably, maybe not your elbow, right? So, I mean, in a sense of being
pretty much, my elbow is part of me.
right, but it may not be involved in the particular activity you're engaged in at this moment, right?
If it's in the room, it will be involved.
All right. And so, are you saying that you, at least that your intent is to keep awareness of your whole body all of the time, no matter what you're engaged in doing? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And this is, I have experienced a couple of people who I'm pretty sure were in that state more or less constantly after years of practice. And they were, interestingly enough, both high-level Indonesian martial arts teachers. And I never caught them asleep in their body. Doesn't mean that they weren't at some point, but certainly not while I was around.
And I guess what I'm wondering is, does that take away from your ability to focus on whatever particular task you're focusing on at the moment?
No. As a matter of fact, it makes your ability better.
Okay.
It absolutely makes your ability better. Forgetting yourself is never a good tactic for doing anything. And this is not having your attention so much as having your sensing permeate.
Right.
It's not like I am focused on my right elbow. I'm allowing my awareness to embrace the feedback that my body gives me.
Now that makes a lot of sense to me, because I mean, I see a lot of difference between the focused attention and this sort of almost like a background awareness of stuff which is out of focus, but still very much.
It's in soft focus rather than hard focus.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so this is not like I'm staring at my elbow and trying to feel it. This is, I know where my body is. I experience my body in space.
How was that?
I'm trying to figure out if that's fireworks or gunshots. This being Oakland, it could be either.
How about internal organs?
How about them? Yes, you can experience your internal organs. Good news, it was fireworks. Most people start with their breath, because breath is the easiest thing to sense. You move from your breath to your heartbeat. Most of you, if you stop for a moment and allow yourself to feel it, can feel your heartbeat. Then you can move to the rest of your organs. Your organs of digestion are also fairly easy to sense if you put your attention there, or if you let your attention go there. So yes, every part. Aaron says, increased awareness equals decreased distraction. Absolutely. And this is one of the reasons that martial artists find this, because the highest level of martial arts practitioner has to do this. If that makes sense. When you judge, like in competition, you're watching somebody do a form, and there are certain ineffables that you have to judge. I realize that's a slight contradiction, but I don't have better words for it. And part of it is how much presence do they have when they go through the form? You can get somebody who can do a form perfectly by rote, and it feels totally different than somebody who does a form imperfectly but with complete presence.
Interesting enough. I mean, I think something similar goes on for me in tango. I've always tried to understand. Well, I always try to understand what it is that creates a connection in some cases, and in other cases, you're dancing with someone, but there's no real sense of connection. And part of that, I think, is this presence. You know.
Yeah, and dance is another place that you find it. This is why I keep recommending to people do contact improv if they don't want to do martial arts, because it you know, it's a form of dance that allows you to experience the same sort of sensing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, once you can sense your own body and sense your space and sense your I, then you can begin to sense other people's body, space, and I. Y'all know the story about the Japanese warlord who was looking to hire a bodyguard? You ever hear that story? Even if you have, I'm going to tell it to you again, so sit back. So, Shogun, he wants to hire a bodyguard, and he puts out a call to all of the samurai everywhere and says, I need a bodyguard. Come apply here at the palace. And he arranges for, at the door, you know the old trick with the bucket of water? You know, set it above the door, you open the door, it falls on your head. This is kind of like this, but with a silk cushion. So he arranges a silk cushion so when you pull back the soju screen, it falls and hits you. So the first guy, he comes in, young samurai. He walks in, he opens the screen, the pillow comes, hits him on the head. Before he hits the floor, he's drawn his katana and he's cut it in half before it touches the floor. And the shogun goes, okay, thank you, that's all I needed, and sends him on his way. The second guy, a little bit more experienced, he comes in, the pillow begins to fall, and he reaches up and he catches it and sets it gently on the ground. And the shogun says, thank you very much. And then the third guy, an even older samurai, comes in and he stops at the door, and then he looks at the shogun and says, please, no tricks, reaches up and takes the pillow down. He got the job. Why did he get the job?
He was more aware.
In what way?
Well, it could have been he noticed the pillow, and it could have been he noticed the expression on the shogun's face.
Yeah, Aaron says, increased awareness equals decreased distraction. If you are distracted, it shows no matter how perfect it looks. And Dave notes preventing before action occurring. And Aaron notes that this was played out in the Seven Samurai. Yes, Kurosawa used this story in the movie. And it was done really, really well. So the third samurai's sensing was at such an acute level that he perceived the trap before it was sprung. The other two samurai did not perceive the trap until after it was sprung. This sounds a little metaphysical, but I can tell you it's less metaphysical than it sounds. And yes, Nancy, it is likely that, and this goes back to the intuition talk that I did, there was likely 1,000 different little clues that the third guy picked up before he even walked into the room, and he didn't think them out. He just, his unconscious mind went, oh, reach up there and grab something. And so he did. All right, so what do you do? Let's be practical for a second. What do you do? First, sense your body. Best way to do this is to move, and to move in ways that you're not used to moving. Put your body in a position that it is not used to being in, and allow yourself to sense. Put yourself in an environment that is different from the ones that you're habitually in, and allow yourself to sense. That's all there is to it. After you've done that for a little bit, try the I am exercise, which is different than the weird, channeled masters I am movement stuff. This is not that. I hate to use the same words even, but just perceive what I am actually means. That's all there is to it. If I'm working with you, I will have given you exercises to do these things in one way or the other. The ones that are in my consideration, the best for you. Because this is not a one-size-fits-all sort of thing. This has to be tailored to your particular needs.
So is this the kind of thing that Gurdjieff was trying to do when he was freezing people in the middle of a...
Yes, it's absolutely the thing that he was doing with the stop exercise.
And presumably what was going on in that story you gave us a long time ago about, watching those guys in the...
The dance of the new moon. I'm not going to say anything about that because you have not figured out the riddle of that story yet.
I will not.
Just remember that story is a test and you have to pass it. Not for my sake, for your sake. I don't even know if you pass it. I don't even care. If you pass it, it'll change your life. Okay, thoughts? Feel free to turn on your microphones and talk to me. You don't have to type, except for Dave. He has to type, but it's not his fault. It's the internet's fault.
I'm thinking about the relationship between sensing and caution.
Sensing and what?
Caution.
Caution.
Because sometimes I'm being careful of my knees and it seems like it's sort of like sensing, but not quite the same.
It's probably pretty close if you are paying attention to the feedback that your knees are giving you. Mm-hmm. Pain is one of these things that brings your awareness very, very efficiently. I don't recommend it as an ongoing practice. I mean, Gurdjieff used to love that. He used to love to put people in positions that after a while would get very, very uncomfortable and let them sense that. I prefer a different approach. And of course, he was working with a bunch of Russians at the time. And, you know, Russians are like mules. You have to get their attention.
So Wasaf, you were saying earlier that ideally this is done by doing motions which are not your usual motions, right?
Yes. Particularly to recover areas of sensory motor amnesia.
Right. What I think, as I mentioned before, what I'm doing these days a lot is trying to learn this Qigong stuff, which of course is repeating the same patterns again and again. But of course, as I become more able to do so, I am able to more thoroughly sense the body as it's going through these various motions. And I'm wondering.
Yeah, and if your teacher is any good, they're going to be coaching you to get your awareness into the movement.
Right. Exactly. You know.
Yeah.
But that's not a non-habitual movement. After a while, that becomes, you know, the same movement again and again and again. Right.
Even if it's the same movement again and again and again, it doesn't necessarily. A habit is unconscious. A habit is designed as a single, is defined as a single unit of unconscious behavior. So habits by definition
So
are.
you're saying not so much. So you're saying not so much that it should be a. So what you're advising against is habitual actions rather than the same action repeated, but maybe consciously repeated. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And think about it when you're dancing and you're just dancing out of habit. You're just going through the motion versus when you're dancing with your favorite partner and your awareness is right there. Totally different, right?
A world of difference.
Yes.
That's very much so.
And yet you're using exactly the same motions.
Well, in a way, but tangos and improvised dance, so it's not exactly the same, but yeah, but I get the point, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Dave says, so linking this to last week's intuition talk, when I teach class, I assess these 3 degrees of awareness within the human in class as they are also within whichever postures. Each level of awareness has different types of intuitions associated with whatever to the eye is precisely the same physical posture. So for me, these last 2 talks are very practical, a triangulation I see every week. Exactly. This is a secret, Dave, and don't let it go to your head, but this talk was, at least in part, for you. Now, for those of you who don't know Dave, Dave lives in Australia, and he does some very, very, very interesting work using a method that he calls physical alchemy that does all of these things that we're talking about. That's why we keep him around. That, and he's charming and witty. So, more thoughts, more questions. Talk to me. Have I made any sense at all? Give me feedback. Use your microphone.
Matt here.
Yes, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know your name.
Mushtaq.
Mushtaq. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know my name most of the time either, so don't worry about it. You can call me.
So postures are asanas in yoga, and I have arthritis in my ankle, so perhaps I have amnesia down there.
Likely.
Likely, yeah. So
Yeah, likely.
maybe that's something I could incorporate some asanas.
Only if you work with a really good teacher who understands the limitations of arthritis.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. You could get as much benefit by crossing your leg over your other leg and gently rotating your ankle through different ranges of motion and increasing those rotations to the point where it almost hurts but doesn't.
Yeah.
And then moving your ankle on the floor through different ranges of motion, doing ankle rotations with just a little bit of pressure. That will do probably as much as a formal yoga posture, because most yoga postures, at least in Hatha yoga, the ankles are kind of incidental. But yeah, it would be worth exploring. Make sure that you have a good teacher who understands that you have certain limitations because of the arthritis, and have them work with you on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I was thinking of doing it on my own.
Okay, and my advice to you would be go very, very slowly and carefully.
Okay.
No, that's good. It's interesting that the guy who's teaching that Qigong course that I'm doing is very, and I guess this is part of the Taoist tradition, has got that 70% rule. You know, if this is the 100% that you extend, then you only want to extend 70%. You know, and he's always going for that 70% point. You know, and seems to work. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to use a 1 to 10 scale for a lot of things. It's like, if 10 is the worst pain you've ever felt, and 1 is no pain at all, and you move your ankle, never let the pain get above 4. If that makes sense. It's kind of subjective, but it's another way to do the 70% rule. You want, you want pain to be low. You want effort to be moderate. Things like that.
And then, are you supposed to be? How do you incorporate the I am in that?
That would be a matter of, as you are infusing your ankle with your sensing, also sense yourself. Sense the I am. Sense the I within you. Dave, do you have any advice for Matt? Dave says, not much beyond what you mentioned without seeing the human in real life. Yeah, that's the thing, is often a good teacher is going to do real-time assessment and coaching. And oftentimes that's what you want. You want the outside observer when you're working with things like this.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, more thoughts, more questions, ponderings, answers, anything.
Well,
Good jokes.
A little more about this caution thing, because the thing is, if I'm protecting my knees, I'm not going into pain. But say if I'm dancing, it's like I'm constantly monitoring my knees to make sure that I don't do something to them.
Yeah, so you're listening to the feedback of your knees.
Yeah.
That's perfectly reasonable, especially if you have bad knees. Do you let your knees distract you from everything else?
Yes and no. I
To
mean,
the extent that it's yes, quit it. Easy, right?
right.
So again, it's a matter of making your awareness broader. So you never want to lose sight of the feedback from your knees, especially if your knees are bad. You need that feedback. You need the feedback that says, oh, I can do this, but not that. But at the same time, you don't want that to become narrow focus. You want it to be broad focused. All right. You know what time it is now. It's commercial time. I'm going to subject you to my weekly advertising. I apologize in advance. I will try and keep it short and relatively painless. So there's a couple of things coming up. We have the 3 forces and 6 processes class coming up as something that people who weren't able to attend it can purchase. That will be online very, very shortly. We have the Enneagram of Personality class coming up that will also be ready for purchase. These are the recorded classes from the live experience. And yeah, those are the only things that are happening. If you want to know more about them, you can message me privately and I can give you the entire sales spiel. Oh yeah, there's also the Ultimate Enneagram course, which is the thing that started all of this. And it is, in my estimation, one of the better Enneagram courses out there that doesn't have to do specifically with Enneagram of Personality, and therefore is completely different than all of the other stuff. And you can get that at ultimateenneagram.com because my buddy Steve Barnes is selling it for us because he did the course with me. So I'm making him do all the work. I still have 2 slots open for people who would like to do one-on-one individual work, which is the way this work really needs to be done. Because the real work is never one size fits all. So the work special is you can have 6 sessions with me for half price. And my usual fees are $100 an hour, and you can get the 6 sessions for $50 an hour, just to see if you would actually like to do this kind of work in a serious way and actually learn the practices and all of that kind of stuff. And I will entertain you with my wit and charm as well. And so if that is something of interest, and I'm not talking to you guys because I talk to most of you guys, but this is for the people who are watching this on YouTube and that sort of thing. We got to think about that. And very, very shortly, you will be able to book time with Kyle as well. She is more than ready to be taking on more private clients, and I am pressuring her to do so in as gentle a way as possible. And she is slowly caving to my desires for her to be out there fully working with people or working with strange people. And trust me, you guys are pretty strange. So there's my commercials. Thank you for putting up with them. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, get over there and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All of the talks go up there. There's an entire library of them. There's like almost 50 talks now, which is ridiculous. And yet, here we are. All right, any last thoughts or questions?
You talked about redoing the void thing. I was wondering if that was available.
Yes, I sent out a link to that.
Oh, sorry, I'll check.
Yeah, look in the little chat group that we had on Messenger.
Okay.
Because I don't have everybody for that on a mailing list. But I put, just a few days ago, I put the link to the new Void video on there. So, yeah, you were a member of that class, right? I remember you being there, whether you were there or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you should have been notified. And it would be in Facebook Messenger and the group chat.
Okay.
All right, well, I'm going to stop the recording and thank you all for being here.